Hey everyone, welcome back. This is a game running in the Unity game engine, but was built using AI. So the entire level, as well as the characters, the movement, and everything was constructed using a combination of Fable 5, but also the latest model release from Anthropic, Opus 5. Now, Opus 5 has been released for about 2 weeks now, and you have seen that it's doing really well, even compared to the flagship and state-of-the-art model Fable 5. But one of the main things that people have been talking about is how well it really does in game development. And the main thing that I've noticed is that it's really good at understanding 3D spatial spaces. So this entire level that you see over here was constructed using Opus 5. So it was able to create all of these different landmarks, ensured that the different parts of the levels were actually connected with one another. So you can see I can run, I can jump onto this part here. There's a stairs that's been placed over there. And then we've got this other one over here that allows us to get over to this fishing section. So this overall spatial understanding of 3D spaces is something that in the past you have seen AI struggle quite a lot with. And this is the reason why I think Opus 5 is making a lot of headlines. But the other thing that I wanted to highlight that you might have seen a lot about Claude Opus 5 is how it's able to one-shot entire games that you see on screen over here in a single prompt. And this is something that Matt Schumer posted about, right? And a lot of people thought that this was fake, that this person either used numerous prompts or there was a lot of additional extra stuff that was put in. But what he did was that he actually shared the actual prompt and the source code for this. So you can actually check it out for yourself over here. And you can see here that it was actually verified to be true because people were able to go ahead and effectively recreate different games using the exact same prompt. And the craziest thing over here is that the prompt is extremely simple. You can see there's just a couple of lines over here, but there's some really interesting things about how this prompt is structured. This thing is called the Gauntlet Loop, and I'll be talking to you a little bit more about how it works. But the amazing thing here is that everything does not use any external assets. I went ahead and used that prompt and adapted it, and this was what it was able to create in a single prompt. Everything was constructed within the scene, so it did not use any external assets, it did not use Blender, it just constructed this entire level using the scene editing tools within the Unity editor. And as you can see here, all the lighting has been placed correctly, and this allows the entire world to have things like shadows, as well as really nice looking environments. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to shed more light into my experiments with using Opus 5, Unity CLI, as well as this Gauntlet Loop. So if you ever wanted to learn more about using the Unity game engine along with a state-of-the-art model like Claude Opus 5 and a technique like the Gauntlet Loop, this video is for you. All right, so the first project that we'll be talking through is this one that I built over here. And this started out as a very simple project as I was really interested in seeing if I could combine 2D sprites against a 3D environment. And so what I did was I actually spent some time generating some mockups of kind of environments that I wanted. And after a while, it came up with this setting of doing something with a village by the riverside with floating islands and things like that. And as you can see, this is what inspired this scene that you see over here. Now, the main thing that I was playing around with was whether or not the Unity CLI would be able to work with an agent. And I wanted to see whether it was going to be able to construct a 3D world and then have 2D sprites laid out against it. As you can see, this was actually what the original scene looked like. And the way that it constructed the scene was that it made use of a bunch of different asset packs. So I told Fable 5 at that time, I said, construct the entire scene using appropriate external assets. And it worked really well. What it ended up doing was that it ended up using several assets from this pack that you see over here. And I highly recommend checking out Quaternius's assets. They are really good. They're really high quality. And if you're going for this stylized art style, they work very well as well. It was able to put together quite a nice looking island. So it has this lighthouse in the background, as well as placing the boats, the rocks. So this was the first version that I had. And there were small issues with how the assets were stitched together. So for example, you can see here, this canopy actually is flipped. So it should be orientated slightly differently. But overall, it was able to create a really decent looking world and understand how to use the modular assets to put that together. And this was all done using the Unity CLI as well as Fable 5. And the next thing that you can see here was that I wanted it to replace this placeholder sprite that it had with a nicer looking sprite that you see over here. For this one, it made use of a tool that I created called Spriterrific. And Spriterrific is effectively an AI tool that allows you to create game-ready sprites using just prompts and extremely simple to use. For example, you just have to add the skill, and then you can just use it with any AI agent that you want, whether it's Cloud Code, Cursor, Codex, Grok Build, whatever, and it will be able to create for you game-ready sprite sheets that are animated straight away. You can see it works for all kinds of different games and all kinds of different animations. So it can work for platformers, beat 'em ups like Street Fighter. You can do like a Streets of Rage kind of game. And you can even do things like point and click adventure games. So for example, you can have talking animations, picking up animations. And you can see here, it's actually used to create animations for a football game as well. And you can see it works for all animations. So I have the walk animation, I have running. Okay, and you can see here that's this idle animation. And the great thing is that you can do it for any direction as well. So you can see the idle animation is playing when it's facing left, when it's facing forward, facing down. Spriterrific just works off the bat. You can see this is how the Spriterrific interface looks like. Once you've generated it, it gives you the sprite sheet that you can just import straight into your game. It gives you a preview of how it will look like. And for those of you who are interested, what it does is that it actually uses a video model to create all of the animations before splicing it up into a game-ready sprite sheet for you. And this helps it to overcome a lot of problems that you see with other sprite generation models, where if you have something like a run animation, you will notice that in other models, they tend to get the arms and legs really wrong. But as you can see here with Spriterrific, it is able to generate walk or run cycles that look correct. What it does is that it automatically extracts out the frames, and then it creates a sprite sheet that looks like this. It just works right off the bat, and it just works with any of these game engines and web frameworks as well. So if you're interested in creating 2D sprites for your games, head over to spriterrific.com. It's free to get started. You get several hundred credits, so you can go ahead and generate any character and any animation that you might think of and integrate it straight into your game. And so after I created my animations, it just integrated it within the game. And at this point, I had a pretty decent looking game, but this is around the time that Opus 5 got released. And therefore, I then went ahead and wanted to put Opus 5 to the test. So I told Opus 5, as you can see, I want this game to pop. I want shadows on the characters. I want to have more stylized shaders. I want to make the water animated. And basically, I went through several iterations, and because of the Unity CLI, I was able to make changes to the scene and then take screenshots and then adjust it based on the feedback that I was giving it. And after several rounds, you can see it started to build out the rest of the level and started to make it more stylized as well. So you can see these black outlines as well as the world starting to get a little bit bigger. And then it continued to take screenshots to ensure that the entire level was cohesive. And you can see it even started doing things like this well over here. It's animated, so there's water that looks like it's flowing. And then I'm just going to look around. I'm just going to look over here. You can see it created this animated water in the background as well. And so you can see here, Opus 5 is really good because it started to put things together and try to study whether or not things were overlapping. And then after that, I then said, I want you to continue building out the rest of the level, continuously checking to make sure that things like overlapping items and non-functional aspects are fixed. And so it just went through several iterations of adding more landmasses, adding more items. And then overall, towards the end, this was the final level that it was able to create. And you can see it's a really decent looking level. It didn't get everything perfect, but overall, I would say it got 95% the way there. It was able to create something that looked really cohesive and looked really nice as well. All right. Okay, so this was the first experiment I did with Opus 5, and then after that I saw the whole thing with Matt Schumer's Gauntlet Loop, and I decided to give it a shot as well. So I started a brand new project, and I adapted his prompt. So you can see the prompt is actually very simple. It says, I want you to build a first-person shooter at the level of the most recent Call of Duty games. It should be utterly perfect, visually beautiful, and everything done at a AAA quality. Now, there are a lot of issues with this prompt that can be improved, but this was the exact prompt that he used to get the result that you saw earlier. The main thing to point out is that it's making use of sub-agents, so things run in parallel, and then it tells it to tackle each aspect individually. He asks for a separate sub-agent to check it visually to make sure that it looks great. So this is the key thing here, right? What he did was that he made use of several sub-agents. Some of them were going to build the game, and some of them were going to verify it. And then it pit them against each other in order to do a self-improvement. So therefore, he didn't require himself to look at it. And this is the key thing about the Gauntlet Loop that allows it to keep running. And you can see here, he finally ends off with don't stop until each sub-agent is utterly wowed with the quality. And then they should compare them side by side blind and say which one looks better. So the main thing that you want to do here is that you want to use loop and then use ultra code within Cloud Code. Some of you might be asking why didn't he use goal here? And I think he responded on Twitter that he gets better results with loop. All right, so what I did is that I adapted his prompt for the game that I was trying to build. So I said, I want you to build a 2.5D RPG game with low poly graphics, backgrounds, and 2D sprites. it should be utterly perfect, visually beautiful. And then I just adjusted the phrasing a little bit, but overall it takes in the lessons that he uses in the Gauntlet Loop. But I did say do this in Unity and use the Spriterrific skill to create the assets and then loop until it's straight. Okay? And one other thing that I told you to do is continuously take screenshots as it went along so that we could actually verify how it looked. So you can see here, this was the starting scene in Unity, and then it started to make use of Spriterrific to create this 2D character. And then you can see this is what is going on. It created the world. This was the initial build out of the world, looking really pretty good, but there were issues with the lighting. And then it started to measure and verify against one another. And so you can see that this process just continues on. It actually says that the critics are actually quite brutal. So that's how it really pushed on making sure that the visual style looks good compared to this, where it just looks very washed out. And then it just went through this entire process of improving how the overall game looked. And all of this was automatically screenshotted by Claude. And this is the great thing about using an agent with the Unity CLI, is that you don't have to do this manually. It just is able to do all of this automatically by itself. Now, I just want to show you this end result one more time. You can see here, it was able to basically build out this entire world, okay? And all of these are not using any external assets this time. This time, it built out all the assets using primitives, which is really impressive because it had to create all these things and still keep things coherent. So I'm just going to press play here, and you can see here that it was able to put in other characters within the world, have them animated. So you can have this one over here, and then I think there's a shop owner over here. And you can see there are other characters as well. It took an inspiration from the previous project that you saw over there. I actually asked it what happened, and it turns out that while it was looking for the keys for Spriterrific, it found it in my other project, which is the one that I showed you earlier. And then because of that, it took a lot of inspiration in the controls, the camera, as it was trying to build this 2.5D world. So in some sense, even though this was one-shotted with the Gauntlet Loop, it is worth pointing out that it did take some lessons from the other project on its own accord. So I'm going to try to run this Gauntlet Loop and also tell it to not use any other projects for references and to build it from scratch. But I still think it's a great demonstration of what the Gauntlet Loop is capable of, because this time it did not use any external assets and it was able to create a world that looked cohesive, that looks great. And I think it's a really interesting step forward in terms of how you might want to go around playing with building games and worlds using AI. All right. So anyway, so that's it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I think we're making a lot of progress with the latest models, and it's really interesting to see how people are back to using games as a form of benchmark for the quality and the capabilities of these models. We're starting to see really good results with world creation and level creation, which has always been a bit of a problem, even with the previous state-of-the-art models. So if you enjoyed today's video and found it informative, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on notifications so that you'll always be the first to know when new content like this drops. Now, if you haven't seen my other video where I talk about why the Unity CLI is a really huge unlock for people who want to be able to vibe code games using AI tools with the Unity game engine, you want to check out this video over here. It covers a lot of different things about using the Unity CLI and how you can use other tools and models like Grok to build games with Unity. So definitely check it out over here. All right, till next time, I'll see ya.